And then you have another world which is owned by the machines. Mass personalization at scale, where the algorithm serves you what you want. And it is conceivable that your world is fully personalized in real time based on your wants, needs, and desires.
What do you think does it take to stand out in this new era of media?
Do the things you would never do in the past. Particularly if you're young, you should pick the biggest possible challenges.
Ladies and gentlemen, by way of introduction.
Oliver, when we look at your life through all the different ventures that you went through and also the massive technological shifts that are happening today, what is the most important topic that you think we should talk about?
Embracing change. You hear a lot of people talk about the world is changing, the pace of change is accelerating, and I think although that has probably always been true, certainly for many decades, I think now we all feel it viscerally. If you consider what's happened in the last 2 years with technology and how we're potentially having to rewrite rule books, question all conventional norms, you have these extremes that are happening around us. I know I certainly have become desensitized to the wonderful kind of updates we're seeing, and you're seeing technology titans have to innovate or die. Literally, people that you thought would never be displaced are shipping products at an insane level to survive. Um, so yeah, look, there's a few elements with that. Change is intimidating, it's scary, it's easy to ignore, but it can also be exhilarating. It can be a place where you can fast track your career, your momentum, your life. So I'm the biggest believer if you see a wave coming into shore, instead of fighting it, probably try and ride that wave.
Yeah. And what do you think does it take to be open to embrace this change, what you just described, instead of like being scared by it, which is probably the very first intuitive reaction?
Yeah, you look, when anything changes, you have two choices. One, you can ignore, say it's not happening, bury your head, fear it, be crippled by it, all of those things. The other choice is you can lean in. I think the number one quality you have to have is humility. It's very hard if you've developed skills in an area and then you have this narrative that I'm going to be replaced, or a computer can do the thing I'm capable of better than me. Um, I think it requires a level of humility to lean into change. And then the second thing I'd probably say is just an obsession and curiosity over shiny new toys. Because the reality is, most hype cycles, whenever the world, particularly now we live in a world geared by algorithms, where the most extreme opinions are propagated into all our minds, I tend to believe that um, in that world, we will get a lot of things wrong. This is the next big thing. This
Yeah.
is the next big thing. This is dead. This is changing. And two truths there can be two truths at the same time. One, lots of these predictions will be wrong, but some of them will be truly transformative. And underpinning that, I suppose my favorite quote in this kind of modern generative AI age, it actually came from Warren Buffett. And he said, AI might just change absolutely everything. Everything we've come to know to be true, apart from one thing, people.
Yeah.
Innately, people are the same.
And do you think it makes sense to try to understand what are the things because that are going to change and what are the things that probably will not end up having a huge impact on people, on society at large?
No one can predict the future, but I think you can, from a first principle standpoint, work through what might be impacted. And I think there was a moment for me. I remember watching a few years ago an interview with Sam Altman, and this was at the probably ChatGPT 3 had just been released, so there was this new momentum, and you kind of had the generative era starting. And there was a lot of skepticism around the time, and Sam Altman came out and said, how much is the world going to change? And he said, okay, well, let me lay out the context. There are two primary economic costs in the world. Number one, energy. That's everything resources to produce anything. And the other is intelligence. That's human ingenuity. Everything we see around us is a byproduct of intelligence. And he said, instead of answering the question, he just went, what if the cost of one of those things goes to zero? What changes? Well, fundamentally, the fabric of society changes.
Yeah.
So, yeah, how consequential this will be. I think that's a first principle thought. I think a
Yeah.
lot of things are going to change. But if you hold the second truth that people remain the same, we still have the same wants, needs, and desires, we're the fixed thing in this equation. I think it allows you then to think about, well, okay, um, where should I invest my energy?
Yeah.
Where should I invest my time? So yeah.
I think it's interesting that also the example that you brought from Sam Altman, that actually, like, if you reduce one to zero, what happens is also that the other side sparks, like the energy. I mean, it's just a technological shift that then energy will become probably a scarcity. And Oliver, what is your backstory? So how did you first get into touch with like media and also like now talking about AI? So not only from a consumer perspective, but using it much more as a tool yourself.
Yeah, so my career's probably spanned about 15 years, a little longer actually. I started as a musician. I was a drummer. That was the start of my career. I say I'm a failed indie rocker. I then went on to study university music and marketing, uh, music and promotion. I was exposed to marketing, kind of fell in love with marketing. It's for me, understanding people is a foundation that every marketeer needs to have. And very much it's the intersection between that and business, psychology and business. So I found it interesting. It was a gateway into a new world. I joined a large media owner on a graduate scheme. So I had a traditional corporate career
Yeah,
path. Did that for 4 years. And then I one day went onto Facebook and I saw a TED talk by Steven Bartlett. Uh, and he was talking about building a multi-million dollar business, knowing nothing about business, and that spoke to me as he was a few years younger than me. So I reached out to him just full serendipity and said, "Hey, inspiring seeing what you're doing. Keep it up, my man." That was it. He asked me to meet him, and at the time the business was gaining a bit of momentum. It was a business
yeah,
called Social Chain. It'd been around for approximately about a year. And then I joined that business. I joined him on that journey. That was 5 years of my life. We went through an IPO. I moved to the US with Steve. We built out the US business. And that was a very interesting period for me because I always describe it as entrepreneur school. I was thrown
okay,
into situations that I wasn't qualified to be
yeah,
doing corporate M&A and a lot of things. There were a lot of firsts during that period of my life. And a big milestone in my career was moving to the US. I never had any ambition to be there.
yeah,
But when I did, I recognized that if you can make it there, you have this sense you can make it anywhere. So it certainly raised my
mm,
aspirations in many respects. And then after 5 years, that journey ended, exited that business, and started a new company called Flight Story with Stephen. Did that for about 3.5 years, and I had an opportunity to sell my stake in the business.
yeah,
And I'd kind of worked with Steve for almost a decade, and I was ready to do the solo act.
yeah,
And after 10 plus years of reflecting on where my skills are, what I'm good at, what I enjoy, I felt that a venture studio would be the right path for me. I'm very romantic about the start of an organization. I selfishly want to be able to repeat the early days of a
yeah,
company over and over again. So now I launched a studio called Co-Created with three business partners. We invest particularly in creative and marketing startups or creative and marketing founders. And I'll explain because it links to the second part of your question. So my foundational belief when it comes to the world of investing, particularly venture, I think the model is broken.
Okay.
The model is broken because we've conditioned companies to become addicted to the wrong things.
Yeah.
Infinite scale, endless money, pump money into something until it wins. I think that's a dangerous trap. I think
Mm.
founders make bad decisions. And we're now moving into an era because of technology, because of AI, where individuals and small teams are now capable of so much more.
Yeah.
They don't have the diseconomies of scale. You can augment an individual with AI applications and systems and processors, and they can be a 100-person team. That is unthinkable. They can create disproportionate economic value because of technology. So I think that throws the traditional venture model and what we've come. You don't need endless capital. I think the second thing is, in a world where it gets easier and easier to create technology, the barrier has been lowered, but that also means that new skills will rise. It's ironic that it's easier to create technology, it's harder to stand out. So I
Exactly.
believe that marketeers, creatives, people that understand how to connect with people, to communicate, that obsess over the customer, which marketeers do, I think they will have advantages in the future.
Yeah.
So again, backing that sector. And the third component um, is very much about services are now viable, scalable businesses. So I've built many service companies over the years.
Yeah.
Um, and if you want to scale really big, you need to hire lots of people. That's no longer the case, which means you break out of the traditional economic restraints, which actually makes tech-enabled services um, quite attractive for venture
Yeah.
because they're less capital intensive and now they have scalability without hiring hundreds, thousands of people. There is a shadow to everything I just described. It felt a little um, it felt a little unhuman. I describe a world where we don't hire people. So that's the counterweight. And my view is there needs to be support structures and there needs to be businesses in place to help people, guide them and support them on that independent journey. More and more entrepreneurs will be created over the next decade than any other time in history because of two things: want, need, desire, social pressure to control your own
Yeah.
destiny,
Yeah.
and AI displacement. That is a real thing. Large organizations are resizing, and it won't be as wildly abrupt. It will be attrition. Year after year after year, large companies getting smaller, using more technology to deliver their outcomes.
And so you mentioned the barriers of building and starting a business is like getting much lower, while distribution has become a lot harder. I think is the counterpart of it. And what do you think? How will this development affect the media side of things?
In a very material way. So I think we have two worlds when it comes to entertainment, media, creative. I think increasingly IP becomes more important. There's a lot of media that doesn't make anyone feel anything. You're not connected with it. You see it in the rise of fandom around streamers. Streamers are some of the most famous people on the planet that your parents have never heard of. It's because they're connected with an audience through live streaming. They're interacting, they're co-authoring. I think the same parallels exist in media. So on one hand, I think IP is going to matter more and more. It always has, but
Yeah.
increasingly so.
Yeah.
I think the second thing that is probably important to note around media is we need to be bonded by stories and we need to be bonded by big creative work. So I see a world where great creativity will truly sort of transcend and still bind us. That's great film, great entertainment. But then you have this whole middle ground, which is kind of commoditized. and you have this niching down, this extreme personalization. And one of the, I suppose, promises of the generative era as it was coming in was mass personalization at
Yeah.
scale. And we've already experienced that through social media. Your algorithms are different to mine.
Yeah.
You're experiencing a different digital world than I am. But the difference in the generative era is that's being accelerated, that's being multiplied, and it is conceivable that your world is fully personalized in real time based on your wants, needs, and desires. So you have these two worlds, IP and big brand creative and media and things that all bond us, the water cooler talk. And then you have another world which is owned by the machines. Mass personalization at scale, where the algorithm serves you what you want and serves you the things you didn't even know you needed.
Yeah, like thinking of those extremes is also, again, coming back to the beginning of talking about change, is also a bit scary to think that everyone, because it is living in their own hyper personalized environment, because then everybody just kind of consumes what they are supposed to consume and they don't get out of like their own world.
Think of
And
how that influences. That already happens today, by the way. It's the reason the world is more polarized than
yeah,
ever. The
that's
world is not binary, it's not left and right, it's nuanced, but we find ourselves in these echo chambers. Just pour rocket for fuel on that with generative AI. And yeah, we're gonna enter. I've just recently watched Black Mirror, the new series. I don't know if
okay.
you've seen it,
But
but God, we're entering a strange time. I tell you that.
And so based on the description that, or like the ideas that you mentioned, like what do you think does it take to stand out in this new era of media?
How do you start? Look, that's a big question. How did you stand out? Um, Start from a first principle. What's the one thing that AI will find difficult to replace, to emulate you, your imperfections, your flaws, your vulnerabilities? When you have a rise in content and the ceiling gets raised, the bar gets raised, there's more, there's better. Um, I think imperfection starts to be a real strength. These, and one of the things that AI doesn't do well yet is it still finds it difficult to emulate um, flaws. Like it really it struggles to emulate flaws. It tries, but it kind of doesn't understand. And I watched a keynote at an event that I was speaking at from a neurologist, and their perspective was speaking about the differences between machine learning and human learning. And
Okay.
it was fascinating to kind of the conclusive point was the mechanisms of how we learn are more similar than dissimilar. So
Oh,
this idea that machines
yeah.
will be able to do a lot of the things we can do, even things that feel innately human creativity, they're
Mm.
built on mechanisms that are quite logical and rational. It's connecting the dots, it's
Yeah.
taking inspiration from here and here, combining them, looking at things through new perspectives, etc., etc. However, what the conclusive point was, machines really struggle to be imperfect. They struggle to be emotional. They can't be emotional. They can simulate emotion, they can't be. So everything that makes us probably gives us disadvantages in the old world, might ironically give us advantages in the new world. So, like, think of it. I'll give you an idea. This is practical. A lot of people use automations for sales,
Yeah.
and we now have a heightened sensitivity for automation. If you can't be bothered to send me a message, I can't be bothered to respond. That's the general theory of most people. And we're all bombarded with an ungodly amount of messages now. And my advice to anyone who's making automations, put some spelling mistakes in there.
Yeah.
Deliberately make it do the things you would never do in the past. It's so important to humanize everything and if you want to be effective. So that's just one small example where human imperfection will give you an advantage, even if
That's
you are using
no,
technology.
it's funny that you mentioned it because I mean I'm from Germany. I guess you will have noticed by now by the accent, but why I'm saying this is because sometimes I'm like writing a mail, like run it through ChatGPT, and then I notice, okay, they are like making it perfect, like taking out all the mistakes and everything, and I'm like, why? Well, like that's not me. So actually, I leave things as they are,
Oh,
put them
good.
in. No, I mean they're not completely wrong, but probably like they're just weird. Like you wouldn't say it in that way. But I think also
Yeah.
like that's basically my background, right? That's where I'm coming
That
from. So
goes against every German stereotype in the planet to accept imperfection.
thank you for saying that. I'm happy to hear this. Yeah. And so, Oliver, I got a quote for you, which is from Mark and Reason. It's funny that we talked about it before. Um, it says, the world is a very malleable place. If you know what you want and you go for it with maximum energy, drive, and passion, the world will often reconfigure itself around you much more quickly and easily than you would think. Have you ever experienced this yourself?
Absolutely. I speak about this a lot with our founders,
Oh,
the people
really?
we're backing. I sent a voice note to the guys and it's a quote that I love that is not too dissimilar. So
Yeah,
there's two things I want to share to build on that. Naval did a wonderful podcast with Chris Williamson relatively recently. And one of the bits I loved was Naval sort of stating that true intelligence, we talk about intelligence, IQ, EQ, true intelligence is being able to get what you want. Happiness, love, wealth, whatever it is. That is by definition probably the truest form of intelligence. Are you capable of getting what you want? The second one, and this is what I shared with some of our founders yesterday, enlightenment begins when a wave realizes it's the ocean. And it's such a poetic way of describing.
I like
And
that.
I actually need to figure out who
Yeah,
said that. And when I heard it, it just hit home. And honestly, the big I say this a lot. A big part of our mandate. So co-created, we co-found companies with others. So you can come to us with the seed of an idea and we will interrogate it, stress test it, help build it like true co-founder support. That's our point of difference from the rest of the ecosystem. It limits us in scale. We can't get involved in lots of things, but it means that we get to control our own destiny, our own outcomes. We're not passive investors. We're really hands-on. And what's interesting is my two observations is one of the best things we can give founders is stopping them fucking up, stopping them making
yeah,
mistakes. You inevitably will walk through. Number two is focus, giving them discipline and rigor, helping them stay focused on the right things. And sometimes you need an objective voice to be able to do that,
definitely.
that's either walked that path or has a more neutral temperament in the good and the bad. But the third and probably the most important thing we can give to founders is raise their aspirations. And I mean that is help them see what we see in them. And it's so true. If you want to go build a business, if you build a small business, it's really difficult. If
Mm,
you build a big business, it's really difficult. Doesn't matter. But one of them gives you a much
yeah,
greater return. And
yeah,
it's particularly if you're young, you should pick the biggest possible challenges because the chances are your first couple of businesses are not going to work. So you may as well swing big. So yeah, my belief, I love that quote. I think it's true. I'm not a believer of manifestation and a lot of spirituality
yeah,
practices, but I will say the mind is a complex thing and it's very, very powerful. And at the root of that belief is self-fulfilling.
yeah. And what does it take to bend reality in that way? So, for instance, you said one of the things you can give to founders is raising their ambition. How do you do this?
So there's small things you can do. Number two, you can practice radical candor when someone's thinking small or obsessed on the wrong things. You can tell them very directly. The other is when they win, you can celebrate them. You can give them that support. You can show them a future that they can't see yet themselves. I talk about I speak in 5 year, 10 year blocks with our founders. I say, you cannot, I say, develop these habits. And I'm really hard on the guys, by the way. I say, develop these habits. I wish I knew this many years ago. And I've walked into walls for you. And it can be on anything. It can be on how you market yourself. It can be around some discipline in the business. It can be about hiring.
Mm,
It can be how they experiment, whatever that thing is.
Yeah.
I try and enforce habits, and I tell them the compounding impact in 5 years of you doing this in a disciplined manner over and over again. And what's really interesting is that when this really lands is the momentum. Some of our founders are doing phenomenally well in a short space of time.
Yeah.
And I've just seen how the results are now reaffirming their
Yeah.
beliefs and their aspirations are
Yeah.
rising and rising and rising. So it's a combination of the macro,
Mm.
saying big picture, not getting caught up entirely in the weeds.
Yeah.
And then the second part is obsessing over the detail and like really forming the habits that will lead to great outcomes over the next decade. So it's the combination of those two things. And ultimately, results have to come. I could tell you till the cows come home that you're going to achieve X, Y, and Z. The reality is, if you don't start seeing results, you're not going to believe it. You never will. But the wonderful thing, there is this other force in the world. Optimism is self-fulfilling and momentum is self-fulfilling.
Yeah.
When a business has momentum, you get this sense that you can take on the world. And
Yeah.
that momentum won't always be there. So I say to the guys, be really impatient with this. When we're winning, go aggressive. Don't get complacent. We go very aggressively and we move fast.
Yeah.
There will be times that we're way more difficult than this. But when you have that momentum, bottle it, run at it.
Yeah. No, I love that. And one of your slogan from Co-Created is co-founders first, investors second. How does it translate into like the actionable side of the business?
Well, look, again, it comes down to venture. People think if you throw money at
Yeah.
things, it'll work. I promise you that's not the case.
Yeah.
I've worked with hundreds of businesses over my career, from the world's most successful companies to many emerging startups. And you capitalize a business before they're ready, and they will make shitty decisions. They will hire too many people. They will feel a sense. Constraint is actually a wonderful thing. Constraint as a founder will make you focus.
Mm.
It will mean you can't get distracted.
Yeah.
It will mean that you have to be more inventive, more creative in how you find solutions and capture people's attention and deliver results. So I'm a big believer that what most people need isn't more money. Yes, we put money into businesses, but fundamentally what they need is like support. And I mean literal support as to get over there's so many talented people that just can't take the leap into entrepreneurship
Yeah.
because of not because of there are some because of obviously circumstance,
Yeah.
but a lot of people it's psychological. And when we act as a co-founder and we get hands-on and we are involved in every decision, it was something one of our founders said very early. Like we used to call ourselves venture capital or investors. And it was like, you're just so not. He
Yeah.
went, you're up with me till 3 a.m. telling me why my website's shit and redoing it
Yeah.
for me. Like
Yeah.
like that level of obsession.
Yeah.
And it's because genuinely we love it.
Yeah.
We love what we do. We love building companies. And I'll tell you on a selfish level, over my career, I've become a bit desensitized to good things and bad things
Mm.
happening. It's a byproduct of experience. So
Yeah.
something great happens, I don't feel the high I once did. Something bad happens, I've seen a lot of bad stuff, it doesn't affect me.
Yeah.
That's actually advantageous in business. I have a
Yeah.
very even temperament. But being around founders and seeing them have firsts in their journey and how inspired and energetic and how
Yeah.
fueled they are, that's infectious to me. So
Yeah.
that's one of the selfish things I get
Yeah.
out of the process.
Yeah. I think that's very cool. And I mean, you're coming from a marketing background, and marketing is also the practice of understanding human behavior and psychology. And so, what are clues that you're looking for when you're trying to understand people, like especially when you're looking for founders to work with that probably are not very far in their journey yet? So it's mostly about the person probably and the idea. So what is it that you're looking for in people?
At day zero, it's always the person. Barely ever the idea. It's a field. Is this a upward or downward trend? Like, how difficult is this business? Can we add value outside of that idea? Always the person. I haven't fully formed my founder thesis yet. I have my starting thesis, which are qualities I think founders have to have, but my thesis is changing a little bit, having worked with with some people. So my starting thesis was number one, I think you have to be ambitious. And I
Yeah.
say ambitious because, again, it's self-fulfilling.
Yeah.
If you think big, aim big, I think
Definitely.
ambition is one. But ambition manifests itself in different ways, and we all have it's subjective, right? So number two, I think being a really nice person. And I say that because I can't overstate how just being likable helps you in business,
Yeah.
helps you negotiate better deals, helps you hire people because they want to be around you.
Yeah.
It's the foundation of a kind of trickle down culture. Just like be a decent person.
Yeah.
And don't conflate decent with a walkover, or don't conflate decent. You can
Yeah.
be nice in one setting, but
Yeah.
be a killer in business, hold very high standards. So that's number two. Number three, deep domain expertise. We want to work with exceptional founders. So if you're building a business in fashion, I want you to know everything about fashion. It might be a marketing business, but if you're going to be involved in an industry, and I believe in the new age, domain expertise is one of
Yeah.
the most valuable qualities.
Yeah.
The other then is like, I'm going to say hard qualities, not soft, resilience, kind of character, work ethic, all of these elements. Um, and now, as I zoom out, we've been trading for about 7 months now.
Okay.
We've launched 6 companies, three are publicly trading, three being built out. And I think the number one quality and it's hard to like describe, it's obsession. It truly is obsession. Like I'm seeing this in the founders that are having the most success right
Yeah.
now, is they are truly obsessed. Some of them didn't start obsessed, but they became obsessed with the results and the process. And some of the founders are just obsessed with the thing that they have.
Yeah.
Like they just, and I mean, I mentioned it before. One of our guys, um, had an opportunity to pitch to A16Z for well before they should have. By the way, very early with where MVP's been built, etc. Got down to the last 32 from about 2,000 applicants. 10 businesses will get $1 million check from A16Z. And moreover, it's the experience. It's not the check. It's the go to LA, be in that environment. Go to San Fran, be in that environment, etc.
Yeah.
And the founder came to me and said, "Hey, do you mind if we apply for this? I know we're not looking at venture or outside parties, but I think I go great. Go ahead."
Yeah.
And seeing what he did in that process. So I want to paint this picture because I think it's valuable to the audience.
Yeah.
So first of all, he reads every book affiliated with A16Z, not just the hard thing about hard thing, like literally every modern book. He listens to every single podcast. He listens to every podcast of the enemy of this business. And the enemy is, we talk about mission, we talk about enemy. Who are we fighting against?
Yeah.
Who's the number one right now that we're going to steal share from?
Yeah.
He listened to every podcast from their chief product officers across 3 different lanes over the years. The level of obsession just to derive insight. All week, he's been training his AI to be a difficult, temperamental VC and grill him. And then we did prep work an hour or two before the actual pitch, and he nailed it. And he's an introvert.
Yeah.
He was terrified, and he nailed it. As I said, there are many reasons for us not to get this. And I mean that there are way more reasons not to. But I think he put his best foot forward in a way that, regardless, we're all very proud of the process. So look, that to me, that level of obsession, and this is a person that is currently on his notice leaving so he can go full time into the new business while it's being built, leaving a very demanding business. He's now building at light speed with us, a phenomenally ambitious company, and he's finding the time to just obsess in the details and do the things that others are not doing. And actually, for me, I said to him yesterday, this makes me want to step up my game.
Yeah.
I'm inspired by you. I'm like, I need to be more obsessed. I need to do more prep work. I need to stop relying on like my comfort zone.
Yeah.
So look, yeah, that's that. I thought I'd share that because I think it's an important quality of a founder.
And how can you assess I mean, how's the process usually? You get a pitch deck when people like also for people listening, if they would want to apply, for instance, they send a pitch deck, and how do you kind of observe this obsession from like the documents that are handed in?
I haven't figured that out.
Okay.
It's impossible. I don't
Yeah.
think you can.
Yeah.
What I look for, look, the pitch, the idea, there's two factors there. Yes, sense check the person's credibility, but that's not a hard stop. That's not limiting. If the idea is interesting, and from our perspective, and I echo, we will do probably 10 companies a year. That's it. We'll build from scratch, day zero, 10 companies a year. And what that fundamentally means is we're looking for synergies. We're looking for to be greater than the sum of our parts. So where there are natural gaps in our services, where there are natural hands-off. So you could pitch us the best idea in the world at the wrong time, like genuinely, and you could be super qualified. So there are a lot of forces that are out of your control, timing,
Yeah.
but what I will say is just be really concise and solve a problem. Don't talk about AI. Like AI is ubiquitous. Doesn't matter. I assume what you're building is AI or has AI embedded within it. Otherwise, like
It
my
needs
assumption, it
to.
has to be.
Yeah, exactly.
That's just that's table stakes
Yeah.
now, you know.
Yeah.
That's my assumption. So yeah, look, really solve a problem and demonstrate that you understand that problem.
I think, yeah, coming back to the beginning, because what you said, what is not going to change is humans. So probably it's more about talking about the human side, like basically which problem for humans you're going to solve. And then there are like different ways. You can either use AI tools or whatever it is, but then probably the problem must be human related.
Yeah. And look, I'll give you an analogy. This is particularly for product and tech, which I love. If you're building any kind of SaaS solution, any agent,
Yeah.
just a form of technology, there are two worlds, and the middle is fucked. One world is you solve a big problem in a really material way for a few people. So you go really deep, and that's how you can create a lot of value. People will pay a lot for solving a big problem. Or you go to the other end, which is you solve a little problem, a bit of friction for a lot of people. Anywhere in the middle is no place to play. Go to one of those extremes, and you're much more likely to stack the odds in your favor.
Yeah. Oh, I love this. And I always like to think of life in different phases. And what phase are you in right now with co-created, and what is next for you?
Yeah, interesting. We are conditioned to have 5 year phases in our life from schooling. You kind of go through these 4 to 5 year chunks. I've very much followed that path. I've had 5 year chapters in my life. And when I think about my next year, I started co-created with no intention of leaving it. As I said, I think it's the byproduct of many reflections of what I'm good at, what I enjoy, and I want to do, and I find a deep amount of fulfillment from it. Maybe that changes in a few years and life and circumstance, but fundamentally, this is the most fulfilled I've ever been in a
Wow.
professional endeavor
Yeah.
as I am today. And I've actually never been more ambitious. It's very weird. We do these community hikes. So we invite anyone who's involved in startups or wants to start a business, just come on a hike with us. We do it once a month and you meet some interesting people, some of the
Yeah.
same faces. And again, I just did that as not with a selfish motive, not with a kind of business motive, but
Mm.
I wanted to get out
Yeah.
in the outdoors more often, and forcing myself through a habit and a commitment pact was probably important to do that. Some of the founders that come on this journey, I get a real insight into what makes them tick. What makes the like it's really fascinating. You spend 3 hours with people
Mm.
hearing their backstory and their motivations. Most founders are rooted in some type of insecurity,
Yeah.
some type of I want to prove it to the world. Yeah, certainly rooted in ambition.
Yeah.
So we've got some really interesting things going off. And yeah, I'm just deeply fulfilled right now.
Yeah. It's beautiful. Oliver, we have a closing tradition on this podcast. It's called the open letter, and you can address a one sentence letter to a specific person or to a group of people. So it could be, for instance, your younger self, to future entrepreneurs or to maybe to your competitors or something? So what would it be and what would you say?
I'll give it to my younger self. There are no risks. Take more risks. There are none. I was as a younger man, even that I've had somewhat of an entrepreneurial career and I've had music chapter, corporate, um, I've always been very risk adverse or certainly measured. And having, you know, Steve's one of my best friends. He's got one of the strongest risk appetites I've ever been around, and that's infectious. And it's helped me a lot to really understand that there are no risks. It seems an arrogant thing to say there are no risks. If you have conviction in your capabilities, there are no risks.
Thank you so much for this conversation, Oliver. I'm following you since a while, and what I'm always very impressed by is how you combine a certain like it's a nonchalance with a candid way of addressing like the depths of very complex topics, and I think you do it in a very with a very comfortable lightness. So yeah, I really enjoyed this conversation, and
Thank you.
it
Likewise.
leaves me very inspired. So thank you.
Yeah, likewise.